Hi, my name is Wendy Amsellem. I'm on the faculty at the Drisha Institute for Jewish Education, and this week's Parshat is Parashat Ki Tisa. In chapter 32 of Parashat Ki Tisa, we have the very exciting and disturbing story of the golden calf. As you recall, at the very beginning of chapter 32, the people see that Moshe is late from returning from Mount Sinai, and they gather themselves to Aharon, to Moshe's brother, and what they say to him is, "Kum aseh lanu Elohim asher yelchu lefanenu." Get up and make for us a God that will go before us. Ki zeh Moshe ha'ish asher ha'elanu me'eretz Mitzrayim, because Moshe, the man who brought us out of Egypt, lo yadanu mehayalo. We don't know what happened to him. Aaron, instead of arguing with them or telling them that he can't build them a god and that they should wait for Moshe and that they had, just received the commandments from God, indicating to them that they are not allowed to have any graven images, instead of making this argument, Aaron instead says, "Parkunis mea zahav asher ba'osnini shechem." Remove all of the gold rings that are in your wives' ears and in the ears of your children and bring them to me. The people immediately gather up their gold. They bring all the gold to Aaron. In verse 4, we're told, "Vayikach mi'adam vayatzaroto b'charet." Aaron collects all the gold. He crafts it with a tool. He makes it into an egel masecha, into this molten calf. At which point, some plurality of voices then say, "Eile Elohecha Yisrael asher ha'elucha me'eretz Mitzrayim." These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Aaron sees what's going on. He builds an altar and he says, "Chag LaHashem machar." There'll be a holiday for God tomorrow. The next day, the people wake up. They bring sacrifices. They rejoice, and that is their worship of the golden calf. God, of course, is very angry about this. Moshe is also very angry about this. And in fact, when Moshe comes down the mountain and sees what's going on, he says to his brother Aaron, he says, "Mea salacha ha'am hazeh ki heveta alav chata'a gdola." What did these people do to you that you could have caused them to sin in this matter? So Moshe seems to be blaming Aaron for what's going on, right? He seems to realize that Aaron was left in charge, and if there's been this calf, Aaron was, intimately involved in the crafting of it. And in fact, in the retelling of this story that appears in chapter 9 of the book of Deuteronomy, there Moshe actually says, "Uv'Aaron hitanaf Hashem ma'od lahashmido." God was so angry at Aaron about what he did that God wanted to destroy Aaron. V'atpalel gam ba'ad Aharon ba'etahi. And Moshe says, and I had to pray on behalf of Aaron at that point in time so that God wouldn't destroy him. So it seems from the verses as if Aaron has done something very bad, right? He has sort of responded to the people's desire for an idol by gathering the gold, crafting it with his hands, building it, suggesting that there be a festival for the idol. Moshe seems to blame Aaron for doing this. God blames Aaron for doing this. Seems like a pretty bad story for him. One of the things that's very interesting is that in the world of traditional parshanut, traditional commentaries on the Torah, for the most part there's a strong effort to exonerate Aaron. And I would say that effort kind of takes place in three different modes. One mode is the mode that is suggested by several commentaries, specifically often associated with Rashi, where what Rashi will say is that at each point in time, Aaron doesn't intend to actually build an idol. He's just trying to slow the people down. He wants to kind of delay the process in the hopes that Moshe will come back before the idol is done. So, for example, when he tells the people, "Please remove the gold that is in the ears of your wives and children," Rashi says, "Amar Aharon bilibo hanashim v'hayeladim chasin al tachshitehem." Aaron thought to himself, the women and the children, they really like their jewels. They'll argue if anybody tries to take them away, and in the course of all the arguing, perhaps Moshe will come. He says as well, "Vayiven mizbeach," right? Aaron builds the altar, and Rashi suggests he builds the altar himself because he can sort of do the work more slowly. If everybody else were to build it, they would all just bring a stone and quickly the mizbeach would be built. But Aaron builds it himself, hoping that the process will take a longer time, but unfortunately it doesn't. And before he knows it, the calf is made, the altar is built, and Moshe still hasn't returned. But it wasn't that Aaron intended to build an idol, it's that he was trying to sort of slow things down in the hopes that Moshe would come back. A second approach is that Aaron has in fact done something wrong. He's done something wrong, and that's why Moshe blames him, and that's why God in the book of Dvarim is reported as being so angry at him. But in the second approach, the thing that Aaron has done wrong is nothing nearly as bad as committing idolatry. Instead, it's something smaller. So as an example, Ibn Ezra suggests that Aaron's real crime isn't building an idol, because the idol itself wasn't problematic. According to Ibn Ezra, the idol was just supposed to be some sort of physical representation of God that the people would sort of use as a focus for their devotion. But because some people got confused, Ibn Ezra says, "V'chashvu ma'atim miYisrael shehayta avodah zarah." There were some small minority of the people of Israel who actually got confused and thought this was really an idol, and they're the ones who worshiped the idol. And because Aaron brought about the situation in which these people would be confused, that's what he is blamed for, but certainly not for building an idol. Sforno, on the other hand, suggests that actually the thing that Aaron does wrong is that he says, Chag LaHashem achar, there'll be a holiday for God tomorrow. And once he uses this language of holiday, that causes the people to really rejoice and to dance. And the dancing and the rejoicing is the part of the sin that's really problematic. That's the part that Moshe is most shocked by. And that would be the reason, that would be sort of the crime that Aaron does, right? The thing that he does wrong is that he suggests that they have a celebration. Another sort of very interesting perspective on this is that the Midrash in Vayikra Rabbah says, what is it that Aaron does wrong? Also, it's something sort of small. What he does is that he actually tells them that it's just an idol. Right? According to the Midrash, the people are all set to worship the calf, and Rav Asi says, Melamed shahaya Aaron notel korbano upochaso lifnehem. Aaron went up to them and said, Du'u she'ein bo mamash. Know that this is just an idol, that there's nothing really here. And Moshe gets angry at him, and Moshe in the Midrash says, why did you tell them that it was just an idol? If you hadn't told them that it was just a false idol, then they would have been worshiping the idol without knowing better, right? They would have been shogegin, they would have been worshiping kind of unintentionally. Once you told them that it was an idol and they continued to worship it, then they were worshiping it willfully, and a willful sin is much more serious than a sin that's committed unintentionally. And according to this midrash, the sin that Aaron commits is not building the idol, but rather in telling the people that it was an idol. So these are all sort of part of this second mode of approach, where what's going on is that Aaron has done something wrong, but nothing nearly as bad as idolatry, just something sort of smaller, either misleading some people or bringing about a celebration, or perhaps informing them that it was an idol. The last approach, and the one that I find kind of the most fascinating, is to say that not only has Aaron not done anything wrong at all, but in fact his action in building the golden calf was such a good thing to do that that it becomes the reason why he becomes the high priest afterwards. According to a different midrash, Aaron says, look, these people, they're going to build a calf one way or the other. Im bonin hein oto, if they're the ones who build the calf, hasirchon nitle bahen, then the blame for building the calf will attach to them. Mutav sheyitaleh hasirchon bi v'lo b'Yisrael. It's better for me to be blamed for building this calf than for the people of Israel. And so basically, Aaron, according to this midrash, builds the calf himself so that the people won't build it, right? He builds it in order to kind of take all the blame upon himself and absolve them. And according to this midrash, when God sees that Aaron is willing to sort of stand in as the replacement for the people of Israel and accept the blame, God says, you are the one who will always represent the people before me, and that is why God chooses Aaron to be the high priest. Now, all these approaches are very interesting, right? Because they seem to kind of go against the basic thrust of the story, which seems to indicate that Aaron is doing something wrong. I think one of the reasons why there's been this great effort to exonerate Aaron is that it doesn't seem as if he's ever really called to task for what he's done, right? Everyone else who worships the calf is killed as punishment, and Aaron isn't. And I think that there's a sense that couldn't really be. If he was really the main instigator of this, or he was kind of the main engineer of the building of the calf, how could it be that everybody else would be punished and not Aaron? And I think also there's a sense that Aaron in all the other stories in the Torah comes off as such a very positive figure. It seems very difficult to kind of reconcile the idea of Aaron as an idolater with the idea of Aaron as the pious high priest and as the saintly brother of Moshe. So I think as an attempt to kind of reconcile the position of Aaron throughout the rest of the Torah with the position of Aaron over here in the story, there are these different approaches that have evolved in terms of explaining Aaron's behavior in this story. Shabbat Shalom.